Annual Conference Financial Challenge webinar, and how great it is to have you with us today. This is going to be recorded, so if you find this to be a worthwhile experience and you want to share it with members of your staff or your local church, you'll be able to access the link directly through the EVC, Equipping Vital Congregations office. Our website is under development right now, so just send a message to Cindy Weaver, EVC office, and she'll be able to provide the link. But I think you're going to be pleased with what you learn here and what you experience in this time together. Finishing well in 2020 and starting strong in 2021. What a year. What a great conversation to be having as we move into the last quarter of this calendar year. And as we think about what it means to be disciples of Jesus who are generous in all aspects of our lives. I am delighted. Well, first of all, I'm Gary Shockley. I am the Director of Equipping Vital Congregations, working out of the conference center right now out of my house, like everybody else on the planet. And joining us today is the Reverend Dr. Scott McKenzie, who is a clergy member of this annual conference. Scott and I have known each other, wow, a long, long time.
Don't even say it. Don't even say it.
We both had hair. Nice hair, as I recall.
That's right. That's right.
Scott is a partner and Senior Vice President of Horizon Stewardship. And Scott and I shared that journey together for a while. I also worked for Resource Services Incorporated out of Dallas, Texas for a number of years, doing stewardship campaigns for churches all over the United States. Loved the work, hated the travel, but there's nothing more exciting for me than to talk about stewardship, and I know that's true for Scott as well. So Scott, welcome.
Thank you.
And running all things technological is Cindy Weaver, my trusty assistant through EVC, with whom my work would not be possible without her. So Cindy, thanks for your help today.
Yes.
You're very welcome. It's good to be with you guys.
You can send chats, you can use the Q&A button, and Cindy will catch those, and from time to time we'll stop and acknowledge those things and spend some time with you. So Scott, I'm just gonna lead this into you. This has been a crazy year, unlike anything anybody has ever experienced, that has affected the church at every conceivable level. And I think finance as well. I do want to add this, that in this annual conference, giving to mission shares has stayed incredibly strong through 2020. That is a testimony to the covenantal connection that we have in this conference and the faithfulness of our people. I think we're anticipating that our giving may end up at 94%. We are, of all the annual conferences, 60 in the United States, we are the highest giving conference in the connection. And that's something I think is commendable, and you are to be thanked for that. Thank you so much for your faithfulness. So Scott, help us to think about finishing this year strong and starting next year well.
Amen. Well, thank you to Gary, and a special thank you to Cindy for being behind the scenes and doing the tasks necessary. And Gary is, of course, exactly right. You all know this very well. This is such a difficult time. I have often described this as the perfect storm for our churches right now, between COVID, election, racial unrest, all of that coming together is created a perfect storm. And how do we finish strong and really start well? And that's the purpose of our webinar today. And I'm going to share my screen with you and just walk you through what it is you might be able to do. The first thing we're going to talk about is current trends. Secondly, we're going to then take a look at some very specific things that you can implement right now. I'm not talking about things that you have to wait and do all kinds of extra work for, but things that you can really do right now to make this work for you. I want to have right on the front end. One of the things I've learned, I've done so many of these, and I've learned that I get to the end and I forget to give you some of the resource stuff. So I've given my email address, Gary's email address, his office phone number, and actually I've given you my cell phone number, but I see, how did I miss? It's 717, not 712, 717, and that's my cell number. But probably the most important thing on that screen is the giving365.com, which is a Horizons resource that is just full of everything from how to do your PPP loans and forgiveness, and how to do budgeting in the midst of this time, to offering talks. All the things that we're going to talk about are really also available on Giving 365. It's free. You just have to sign up, and it is full of resources that are going to help you in terms of generosity. Now, obviously, you know, everything has changed. You don't need me to tell you that. You don't need me to tell you that there are needs and opportunities. The one thing that I want to remind us of is that in this time, we can't just be thinking the same way that we always have. And this is going to be especially true in generosity and in finances. It's going to require some new innovative thinking. So what are some of the trends that are going to drive this need for doing things in a new way? Well, this is an interesting study that comes to us from the Lake Institute. The Lake Institute is the leading group for doing studies of giving across the United States. They do, every year they do a Giving USA, which is the preeminent publication for nonprofit giving in the country. And what you'll see from this particular study, which they did on giving during COVID, I share this with you to show you that out of all of the churches they surveyed, which was well over 1,000, not a single congregation expects to increase their budget for 2021.
Wow.
Not a single congregation. That blew me away. I don't know that I've ever seen a survey like that where there wasn't a single response in a particular category like that. And you can see that the majority, almost 40% of mainline churches, you see overall Catholic and then mainline and evangelical, are expecting a 5 to 10% increase. You've got then a number that are looking about 10% that are looking at a decrease of more than 25. So it's really, and there it is, 50%, 52% overall that are hoping to simply maintain. And I just want to say to you, hope is not a strategy in terms of especially planning for your finances and what we're trying to accomplish. I have churches that are just saying, look, we're gonna cut, we'll cut 10%. We'll start from last year, we'll cut 10%, and that's how we're gonna do our budgeting. And that's not a good strategy, obviously.
I like what you said. Hope is not a strategy, meaning we can't just be sitting back and thinking, God will take care of all this. It'll be okay. Let's just pretend that nothing's happened and see where we go from here. That is a bad
exactly right
idea.
there. Or it's the we're just going to hunker down, and we'll just wait it out.
Right.
And one of the things that we've talked about, and this is at our company, we've talked about the fact that we went into this thinking this was going to be like winter, last 3 months, but spring is coming.
Right.
And what we're looking at as a company is we're saying, look, this is a mini ice age, and we better adapt or we're not going to survive. And I think the same is true with churches. This isn't a winter. This is an ice age, and we better be willing to be flexible and adapt, or guess what? We're going to go the way of the dinosaurs.
So when churches talk about wanting to get back to normal, normal is not a good idea either, because what we have done in the past, even as it relates to stewardship, is not what's going to be required of us moving forward because of the challenges that we have.
Exactly right, Gary. Yep. And one of the trends that we're seeing even prior to COVID, and this is what makes this so important for what we're doing, even prior to COVID, this is a graph from that Giving USA for 2019. So this is pre-COVID, and even in pre-COVID, you had 29% of all charitable giving going to religion. That is an all-time low. Now, granted, it's higher than any other category, but it is now at an all-time low. And this next slide just shows you a little bit of how that's happened over the years. You see on that left side, that red circle, 56.4. Well, from 1980 to 84, giving to religion, which includes churches, the religion received 56 cents of every dollar that was given to charity. Churches received 56.4%, religion. And then you go out to the far end, 2015 to 2019, over that 5-year spread, it has fallen to 30.5. And as I said, in 2019 by itself, it is actually for the first time in our history below 30%. And this is pre-COVID. Now, one of the reasons, and most of you know this because you get their letters in your mailbox, you get their emails, and now their texts on your phone. There are 1.3 million nonprofits, and that was in 2018. 1.3 million nonprofits, and guess what? They've got the names of all your people. They've got all their names. I was working a church in North Carolina, and one of their lead givers, he owned his own factory, and I went in, we were doing a phone call, and he said, "Oh, Scott, just go in and sit at my desk." Well, I went in, I sat at his desk, and I happened to see this stack of papers. And I was a little bit nosy, and the stack of papers were all requests for him to make a donation. A stack that was probably 2 inches thick. They have all the names of your people that give, believe me, and so, they are being asked.
So 1.3 million nonprofit groups, all trying to get their hands in the same pockets.
That's exactly right.
And I think of my father, who's 90, and when we go to his house, he's got notepads and stickers and pens and things that he's getting from these groups that are all making an ask, and he's pretty savvy about checking the credibility of these organizations, but he's a very charitable, generous person. I know he tithes, and this is above his tithe, but I'm wondering how many, and the last churches that I served, I learned that if people were tithers giving 10%, oftentimes that tithe was divided. It wasn't given to the church, and then other amounts were given to these other nonprofit groups. The tithe was divided among the church and these nonprofit groups.
That's exactly right, and we see that on a regular basis. And one of the things you're going to see, and I have it later on in a slide, is that oftentimes, even for those folks that are some of your top givers, the church is oftentimes not their top. The church is not their top choice in terms of giving. Most of these people are giving to, on average, 7 other charities.
Another little tidbit to throw out there too. I have known people who have the means to be able to give generously to their churches. and we're going to talk about this, but because the churches don't paint a compelling vision of what they're doing or make an ask and invite people to give, those folks assume that everything is fine financially in their church. Even those who don't attend frequently but still love that congregation, if they're not getting communiques, if they're not getting these messages, then they're left to believe that everything must be okay there. Therefore, the education, the college that I went to, the hospital in our locality, the other nonprofit groups are begging for money. They must need it more than my church does, because my church is pretty silent about this.
We think they either, one, don't need our money,
right,
or number two, if I give it, it's really not going to make any difference in the lives of people, because I don't see that happening in my church.
Right. Wow.
I had breakfast with a gentleman, Gary, and he told me, he was heartsick about it. He said, I'm a tither, and I have pretty much decided I'm going to stop tithing to my church. And I said, why? What? He said, I don't see anybody's life being changed.
Wow. So giving to support the and keep the lights on and doing the same thing over and over and over again just isn't cutting it.
It's not. And remember, folks, this is pre-COVID.
Wow.
Think of how much harder it is now when you are not having your people gathered together every weekend, every Sunday. The challenge is that much greater. And that's what we really want to talk about then in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that I hope you have an answer for as pastors is, where are you? Where is the church in terms of, one, what are your changes in revenue streams? You need to be aware. Now more than ever, you need to be aware of what's happening with your income from donors. Do you have people who have lost their job? Have you lost rental income? What about preschool income? What's your endowment income doing, if you have any? You have to stay, your finance teams and you have to stay on top of what are the changes in revenue streams, because it is typically very different now than what it was. Where are you in terms of expenses? Building, with what's happened with, a lot of our buildings being shut down for quite a while. Buildings. What about programming? One that a lot of our people are not thinking about is what are the technology costs? Mm-hmm. What technology equipment do you need in order to really broadcast or do your services online, or broadcast live streaming, and to do it well? And what about local missions? What about local missions? How has that impacted your expenses, what you want to do locally? Again, being very much in touch with that and knowing it. Do you know, as the leader, do you know the changes in your revenue streams? Are you aware of the changes in expenses, up, down, pretty much the same? Mm-hmm. Often, unfortunately, I find that that many of my pastors are not really aware of that.
Yeah, we tend as pastors to want to stay clear of that and leave those conversations to other people in the church.
That's right, and let's be honest. Most of us don't have any training in that. Most of us didn't have courses in seminary or even local pastor school, that dealt with these kind of things. And certainly we didn't have classes in how to do stewardship and generosity during a pandemic, right? So in the midst of all this change, one of the things I want to remind you of is, what is it that remains true? For me, this is the most important part. You have a calling. Each one of us have a calling, and your church has a calling by God to be in a unique ministry. Number two, You do have resources. You have resources as part of your local body of Christ. You have that. And third, what remains true is you have a community and a world that needs what you have to offer. And I think that last one is frankly the most important.
Mm.
Because I'm in a lot of churches and I'm not sure they really believe that.
Mm.
That we have what it takes to fix this broken world
Mm-hmm.
and to bring healing. I was made so aware of that just this morning when I was on the phone with a Lutheran pastor in the Maryland, Annapolis area. And I'm coaching her and we're talking about budget and giving and vision and those kinds of things. And her vision is to have a place where there is going to be a recovery home for addicts. Opioid crisis is really is taking a horrific toll in that part of Maryland. And she just feels so deeply about it. And she was telling me, she said, I don't know, Scott, if it's just me, if it's the church, do I really go after this? And while we were on Zoom, she got a text. One of her parishioners had just OD'd.
Wow. Wow.
And I said to her, I said, Sarah,
Wow.
I said, Sarah, you know the answer to that question.
Boy.
You've got what the world needs. You know what you need to do. And so I just share that. I share that with you. Now, the X factor in some of this, because it's really, I think what I've said so far is actually fairly good news. The X factor is PPP loans. Most of the churches that I'm talking with haven't used all of their PPP loans. The second X factor is what's going to happen with year-end giving.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen with Christmas offerings? What's going to happen with Christmas Eve services? And then what's going to happen in 2021? Most of us that do this for a living think that probably the first quarter of 2021 is going to be incredibly important, and that it's really going to tell the tale in terms of what's going to happen long term in this environment.
What are some of the reasons for that, do you think? I mean, I get why the first quarter would be really important. What are some of the markers?
Well, I think Gary, what we're thinking is that, you know, we had this bump and the church came together, rallied, and like you even said about Central Pennsylvania and Mission Shares,
Yeah.
Susquehanna Conference, you know, leading the nation, for heaven's sakes. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What many of us are thinking is that it's very possible that as COVID drags on and perhaps election drags on, that it's going to be more and more difficult to rally those resources. And that the first quarter may see folks that decide to step away. I certainly hope we're wrong.
Right.
But it's one of the concerns. We're seeing some churches that are seeing a dip in their online attendance. And so of course that's a concern. And many of our churches they may know the numbers, but they don't keep track of names, and so they can't do follow-up.
So there's a generalized kind of fatigue across the board. Fatigue with online everything. Fatigue with not knowing what the future holds. Fatigue in terms of being asked to do more with maybe less resources. But I got to believe, going back to that chart from the Lake Research, and I looked at that, it's like, so giving to churches or to religious organizations is decreased about 5%. consistently every whatever marker was,
Mm-hmm.
to get from 56% to 30. There's a trend of, it's just a downward trend. It's not like this. It's not like 2019 was an outlier or a bump not to be
Right.
predicted. You could almost write what the script is going to be going forward. If we follow that trend line, giving is going to continue to decrease at 5% in each of those markers. Now, added to the fact that there are so many nonprofit groups at 1.8 million, they all are looking for income to keep their work going steady as well. I just wonder, I'm just pondering this. The folks who are generous, the folks who want to make a difference are going to, maybe in the turn of the year, they're going to observe the landscape coming out of the election. They're going to assess where they are and where their church is in terms of its role in the community and the world. They're going to look at the things that energize them in terms of their own generosity and giving, and they're going to make decisions. I think they're probably still going to give. The question is, are we placing ourselves in a position to encourage the giving to come in our way so that we can use it for the kingdom of God? Are we going to, for lack of a better word, capitalize on the generosity of people, or are we going to allow that to just be directed elsewhere? That to me is a significant challenge for us.
It really is, Gary. And this next slide deals exactly with that.
Good lead in.
Perfect, man. Perfect. You can tell we've worked together. So here's a word of hope, and this is from another study that was just released. You see it down at the bottom, Dickerson Baker, charitable giving in the wake of COVID-19. Overall giving to faith-based nonprofits is likely to hold steady or even increase through the remainder of 2020. Okay, that's great news. That's great news. But they even put in their study this next paragraph, and this is how they end it. And it was actually a surprise to me because most of the report was fairly positive, just like that paragraph above it.
Mm-hmm.
A dire warning lurks beneath the surface of this good news. Kind of gives you the image of Jaws, doesn't it? Dire warning lurks beneath the surface. 40% of 2020 year-end giving will be fluid. And that's exactly what Gary just said, that you're going to have all of these nonprofits and they're going to be flooding donors with their requests for year-end giving. Mm-hmm. And that giving is going to be up in the air in terms of who gets it. You know, the next sentence, who receives what will be at the discretion of these donors. Now, church, there is more good news. The priorities that were listed by these people who are, you know, it's up in the air. Where am I going to make my giving? Their priorities. You see them listed on the screen: outreach, evangelism, and discipleship. Number 2, meeting the needs of people here at home, the local mission piece. And then number 3, the international mission piece, relief and development. Well, if that's not our that's our good news. I mean, if we can't do that, then we got real problems. I mean, this is right down our alley, isn't it? Or it should be.
So there's Cindy, I'm seeing the questions too. One question I think fits what you're talking about here. Maybe you can unpack a little bit more, Scott, from Jeanette, is what do you believe helps to energize people's generosity?
Well, and that's we're gonna talk about that in just a little bit. But I will tell you the short answer. It's telling the story of changed lives. That's really it. Really is that simple. That's what energizes people. I mean, I'm working with a church that Gary actually knows the pastor there. It's in Clarkston, Michigan.
Mhm.
And I was just on the phone with the pastor just yesterday, and he was telling me again about one of a local person in the community, and never set foot in the Clarkston United Methodist Church. But he was tuning in online, and he heard them talk about the food pantry and what was happening, how they were doing it, the people that they were serving. They were telling the story. They received a check from this gentleman of $15,000.
Mhm.
$15,000
Mhm.
because they were telling the story.
Mhm. Mhm.
One of our churches that I'm working with, a little bit north of here, they have a food ministry. They were again telling that story, and it was the same thing. A check from somebody who has never set foot in the church. Wasn't for 15,000, but it was 1,500, and that's pretty good.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody on this call would turn it down. And again, it's the story. It's the changed life.
Mhm. I'm gonna just add to that. I absolutely agree. It has to be something that's compelling, and it has to be something that connects to the heart of the giver too, and find a way to do that. A maxim that I learned in this work that I still share it all the time, and it just rolls off the top of my tongue, is that people give to people, and I'm going to put in parens projects. People give to people or projects they know, they trust, and they care about. And to me, what that talks about is relationship more than anything else. That we are in relationship with our donors. We're in relationship with the people that we're inviting into giving. And if they know us, they know what we're about. They trust us. They know that we're trustworthy with the money that they give. That they can count on it being used well. And they care about the thing that we're doing, the ministry that we're providing, the vision that we have. Jeanette, I think those are also some things that Scott was saying too, that energize people's generosity, and it's really important to make those connections for people.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Awesome.
Okay, now one of the questions is, okay, these are the three areas. So why not you? Why shouldn't you get it? Why won't you get it? Well, it's because we don't ask.
Mhm. Yeah.
And secondly, it's because we do not thank.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was surprised when I learned from a woman named Penelope Burke, who has done some really great writing and research on giving to nonprofits. And she did a lot of surveys and a lot of interviews with people. And Ms. Burke said that the number one reason from all of her research, the number one reason people give a second gift, okay? Why do they give a second gift? Now, I would have in the past said, well, it's because they were asked. It's not true. The number one reason people give a second gift is because they were thanked for the first gift.
Mm.
And one of the most important things, pastors, I hope and pray that when you receive that first time gift
Mhm.
online,
Mhm. Mhm.
or a check in the mail,
Mhm.
I hope and pray you have a stack of thank you cards right beside you that you can jot down a thank you note and say how much you appreciate them supporting the life-changing ministry that's happening at your church.
Man, that's a great idea. And I know that's a controversial thing, whether pastors should know who's giving what. And I would add, look, if you're not comfortable knowing the amount, you can have your financial secretary or your treasurer, just make a list, write down the name and say, hey, this is a person who gave something for the first time. You don't have to know the amount of it. It could have been $5. But what Scott's saying is so important. Thank you for your gift. Thank you for your gift. I love that. We don't do that enough.
No, that was one of the things that I just had. I'm serving as a generosity pastor quarter time with Spry United Methodist Church, and one of the first things I did was I had our communications person print up a whole stack of thank you notes that went to the entire staff.
Yeah.
And it's been really neat to hear, them talk about sending them out. And so it really is absolutely critical to what we're trying to do.
I think I told you, Scott, in one of our conversations that I one time I served a really large United Methodist church and made a commitment to write a note, very short note, but write a handwritten note to every giving unit in the congregation. Every year they would get a note from me. I don't care if they gave $10 a year, if they gave $100,000. This was a church of 5,000 people. So it was a significant part of my work, but I wanted them to get a note from the pastor saying, thank you so much for your faithfulness. It means a lot to what God is doing here. So there's another question from Jane. And Jane, I think we're going to cover this in a little bit. When making the ask for year-end giving, do you have any suggestion on a time frame for sending out the communication? What is too early? What is too late? I'm going to keep this up because I think we're going to hold it for the second part of what you're going to share with us, Scott.
Yep.
Because you have
that would be perfect.
idea. Okay.
That would be perfect.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 proven strategies right now that each one of you can implement. Okay. All of these, for most of you, can be implemented. And especially the first one. And frankly, it's the first one I think that's the most important. And that is, number 1, to have bold and intentional offering moments. I call them offering talks. I don't care if you're online. I don't care if you're in person, outside, whatever. There needs to be an offering in the service, and there needs to be an offering talk associated with that. I was shocked with the number of churches that when we entered into COVID and everything was virtual and online, I was shocked how many times I'd get on and watch it and there was no offering.
Yep.
At best, it was an announcement, maybe at the beginning, maybe at the end. And no connection with ministry. So what I'm talking about, we're talking about 2 to 4 minutes, and it doesn't matter online or in person. And you actually are asking, just as if you were standing in front holding the offering plates, you're asking them to give, and you're asking them to give online, and you're giving them on the screen the various options. Folks, you got to treat this like it's almost like kindergarten class. You've got to make it incredibly simple. I suggest you set the example. I've seen Adam Hamilton pull out his phone and make a gift, and they're showing him making his online gift. You can walk over and put it in the offering box if you're using boxes now in indoor worship. However that, and you can even change it up. It's absolutely critical. Now, what we want to do is we want to make very clear, you're not going to be talking about pressure, desperation. You're not doing manipulation. Okay. You're going to say thank you. You're going to express gratitude for faithful giving, and you're going to make it worshipful. It's a part of worship. I had to talk with Spry when we started our outdoor worship, and we put up 2 boxes, and but they were away from the worship area, and it was pretty much an announcement. And we moved a box down. We actually had an offering as part of the service. And we gave people an opportunity. We asked them to socially distance. If they wanted to come forward, they were able to do that. And by the time we concluded our outdoor worship service, which was last week, we probably have 50% of the people who were actually coming forward with an offering. We also, of course, had the signs and billboards that said, this is how you can do it online. Make it a part of worship. It is not just an announcement.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, one of the keys is during this 2 to 4 minutes, you're doing those things that I outlined, but you're also sharing a story, preferably of a single life that was changed or impacted. Okay, you can give facts and information, but the best thing is to talk about a child, to talk about a student who received the backpack or food, an email that maybe the pastor received or somebody else received. Use video, use scrolling pictures. Always make sure you find ways to include stories of lives that were changed. Now, one of the cool things is you can change this up. It can not only be about lives changed because they received. You can do stories with people of lives whose lives are changed because they give or serve. Okay. You know, when you have a youth group go on a mission trip, they come back, and with coaching from you, the first thing they say is, thank you for supporting us and sending us. I want you to know this trip changed my life. And then they talk about how. And you do it at the offering time. You can also take it as an opportunity to teach short vignettes of biblical generosity. So it doesn't always have to be the same thing, but you can change it up. This, in my opinion, is the most important thing you can do. And you can start doing it right now. One of the questions that people come up is, they'll say, well, Scott, how do you find stories? One, you ask. Number two, you begin immediately having all of your, every committee meeting, council meeting, leadership meeting, whatever you call your structure, you should be having a time for the sharing of stories. There's going to be a lot of silence at first, but keep it up. It will become the most popular time you have for your leadership team or for your staff meetings if you do this. I promise you.
That's awesome. And those are concrete things. And sometimes I hear from pastors, it's like, I get tired of hearing myself talking about this, or I get feedback from my congregation. It's like, we get it. You don't have to keep spending all this time on it. How would you respond to that? Number one, that I'm getting tired of talking about these things over and over again every Sunday, or we're tired of hearing about it every Sunday.
Well, I would probably respond with, I'm going to keep doing it until you really get it. What? As long as the average United Methodist gift is under 2%, I'm going to keep doing it.
And maybe to remember, this just popped in my head, that a lot of this you're doing for the people who are not yet giving.
That's exactly right.
Or not yet convinced, right? So if you have an online person.
So, and the other thing, Gary, that we need to remember is and I do tell this to my pastors all the time. I say, remember what the research is telling us. The average active Christian used to go to church 3 to 4 times a month. Now they're telling us they go what? 1 to 2 times every 6 weeks.
Right.
So they're not hearing, so you decide, well, Scott, I kind of like this idea, but I'm only going to do it once every quarter. I might do it once every other month, maybe even once a month. Well, guess what? You're going to miss half of your people.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, because the attendance trends have changed dramatically. So we may be saying it every Sunday, but the people who are sitting in worship or online are not hearing it every Sunday because they're not physically present, or they're not tuning in.
That's exactly right.
So suck it up, Buttercup.
That's right. Okay. Now, as part of the offering talk, one of the things that we want you to do is to make it easy for people to give. Okay. Share the information on how to give. There should be, and now when you're doing this online, you need to have, or when you're doing it in person on the screen, there needs to be, give your URL to the donation page. Give a text to give number. Text to give, by the way, is typically pretty underused. It is a great thing for special giving in particular. For example, I mentioned that idea of the youth when they come back from a mission trip. Well, I tell you what I would do is, if I were the pastor and I had youth coming back, I would have the youth do that talk, and I say, okay, see that number on the screen? Pull out your phones and you can text a gift, and this gift is going to go directly to support next year's youth mission trip.
Mm-hmm.
You do that text to give number.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that for the youth. You can do it for Vacation Bible School. You could do it for Hunger. You could do it for UMCOR. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a church and there's been a natural disaster that has just occurred. It happened to me when I was at a Presbyterian church. My brother lives in New Zealand. They had this huge earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand, where my brother actually lives. And I'm in church. They're taking up an offering for that. I look in my wallet and it's empty, like it always is when I travel, because I don't carry cash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If they would have had a text to give number up there, they would have gotten a minimum of $100, probably $200. But nope, it was just the same old.
Look at the political campaigns right now, the billions of dollars that are being raised. And we've donated to our choice of political candidate. For the first time, we've done this, and it's all been through text. And I would add too, the younger the person is that you're appealing to, the more important these electronic strategies become.
Yep.
Because I remember the last time our sons were in a church service in a church that I pastored just a couple of years ago, and the collection plate was passed, and they just held on to it like it was a steering wheel or a foreign object that dropped out of the sky. And they don't carry cash. And they said, you know what, if there was like a card swipe on the side of that thing, and I think we could probably make a business out of this, Scott, collection plates with a scan code or a card swipe. So people could just, do it right there with the plate as it passes by. But if we don't give people an opportunity to give according to their needs and their desires, we're missing out on it. I typically am checking on like 3 services a Sunday. I just pop around to church services in our annual conference. I'm still amazed at the number that are not utilizing this. I had one church that they just invited people to make an offering, and I contacted them and I said, well, is there a text number or a URL or something like that? They said, no, you have to just bring your gift to the office. And I wrote and I said, I live 3 hours away from you. There's no way I'm driving to drop off my check.
Yep.
Not very convenient.
No. And think of the money that's being lost, and more importantly, think of lives not being touched.
Yeah.
Because that money's not being given.
Mm-hmm.
So text to give numbers. One of the things that is very helpful is you can actually show testimonies, videos of people who are doing recurring giving and what it means to them. One of the best ways to do it is you get a video of that 85-year-old matriarch or patriarch making a gift electronically. And he or she looks into the camera and says, if I can do it, you can do it. I actually had one of my churches do that, and they had a significant increase in electronic giving after that video.
Wow.
It's just, you can do this kind of thing and have fun with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Have fun with it. And links to how to give videos. I'm actually going to share with you a short how to give video. There may be, I'm having churches that are offering and giving, offering envelopes and a postage paid return envelope to their people. You go through and your financial secretary says, hey, these are the people who are giving by check. And they're given faithfully, they're mailing it in. And, so you say, hey, I'm going to send a thank you, and I'm going to include some postage paid envelopes for them. Just as a way of saying thank you.
That's a great idea. I've never heard that before. I love that. I love the message it conveys.
Yeah. I care about you. You're important.
Mm-hmm.
You're important. And because sometimes, we put such a focus on the electronic giving that we forget to thank the people who are faithful with those checks.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yep. Put information on the screen, have a sign with good, accurate, up-to-date information. Okay, all right. So to wrap up this piece of it, I want you to be able to see this as an invitation. Again, it's not begging, it's not being manipulative. It goes back to that belief that this is about life-changing, transformative ministry. It's like that story that I told you about my pastor this morning. She realized that she had to be bold and courageous because she was talking about life-changing stuff, literal life-changing / life-saving. And so the question is, and pastors, maybe you need to spend time in prayer. Do you really believe it? Do you really believe it? Then it becomes bold and you become courageous. Okay, here is a video. You might recognize this guy.
As children of God,
Whoops, sorry. There we go.
Born to love. And as we love and give, we partner together as the church to change our community and the world. I don't know when you first began giving to a cause greater than yourself, or who first taught you to practice generosity. But here's a great example. One of the kids from our church, a boy named Colin, sent cash with a note that said, offering for children's ministry, $12. He wrote the address and the note himself. That money will go to feed kids in our community through our kids' Sunday morning backpack offerings. Colin is practicing generosity because his parents have taught him to give, and because you as a church have helped teach him to give too. You've done that for Colin and so many others, people of all ages, because of the culture of generosity that God is developing here. From young children to older adults and everywhere in between, people have experienced God's love and grace through Spry Church and now want to partner together with us and help the world. We invite you now to join together as partners in ministry as we worship God through our giving. There are 3 ways you can express your gratitude through giving and extend the blessings of God to our community: by mail at sprychurch.com/give, or by text using the number on your screen.
Awesome. Way to go, Ken.
Let me try to get us. There we go.
That's awesome.
Okay, I'm not where I want to be. Okay. No,
And thank you for your generous
I'm sorry, folks. We'll get there.
spirit.
Every time I
I would
show
like
the
to show you
video, it seems to screw up.
COVID world, man.
Yeah, yeah,
COVID
it
world.
really is.
Folks, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send it through the Q&A
Put them in there.
box, and we'll stop and we'll spend time on them.
Okay. The next piece is building your online and recurring giving. And this is connected with that previous talk. You know, this is becoming increasingly important. And if you're not paying attention to this, I promise you, you're losing money. Just like the church that Gary mentioned, you know, well, you can drop your check off at the office. No. Okay. Here's an example. Here is St. Jude's Hospital. You all know St. Jude's. Take a look at that opening of their website. One, it's pretty clear what they're about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Go to your website and click on it and wonder what it says you're about. For many people and for many churches, it's clearly about the building. I've even had to say this to that church in Clarkston, because we built about a $6 million building, and boy, they love to feature that on the website. But guess what? That's not what draws people. So that's one thing. And then secondly, look up here. Look up in that upper right-hand corner, donate now, and then donate now on the bottom right. That's really important. Now, here's another example, and this is also from Spry Church, and I've told Ken that I'm using this, okay? This is the first page. Nowhere can you see a giving tab. Now, you come down to the second page, the lower half, and if you look real carefully, you can see right in here, you see the giving online now, and you have to
hard to read.
Yeah, it's hard to read until you put your cursor on it, and then it lights up. Now, that may be pretty slick and pretty nice, but it is not practical, and it's not worth hardly anything. Okay. And so when I shared with Ken, I said, Ken, I'm going to be using our website as an example. And he got all excited. And then I said, yeah, on what not to do. and it was changed that afternoon. It was changed that afternoon. Okay. You know, it's really important to have that, you know, that red tab in the upper right-hand corner on the first page. The first page that people come to, you want a different colored tab, right-hand corner. And you see St. Jude's, they said, no, we're going to do it even more than that. And they put it also at the bottom right-hand corner. They did both.
I heard a statistic one time about the amount of time a person will spend on a website looking for something in particular, and it's seconds. It's something like 10 or 12 seconds. So if I'm looking for the give button, for the example that you gave for Spry, I would have never looked on that second page of those bottom buttons. But yeah, how long does it take people to find what you want them to see?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Gary.
And find somebody outside your church to look over your website if you have one, and ask them how long it takes them to find the things that they're looking for, and whether your website is a hospitable place for them. That's
a great point, Gary. And one of the things that you can do is, you know how we used to have, what do they call them? The secret shoppers.
Right. Mhm.
And, we would do that for some churches. Were
Mhm.
smart enough that they would actually do that for their church services and have people come in and do that. Uh, and boy, it's a great idea to do that with your website.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna talk about a few of these things that your finance team and you as pastor ought to be doing and checking out. And what Gary said is one of them. Go online and, how easy is it to find your give button? One of some things that you can do to customize the settings for your giving, for your recurring giving online, is you can actually make recurring giving the default. Now you may need to talk to your provider, if it's Vanco, whoever it is that does your giving. I have found that if you call and talk to them, they will help you. You can make payment of fees the default. One of the arguments that I'll get from churches is, well, we don't want to have people using credit cards or other things because of the fees. You can actually have that set up so that the fee comes out. The people are asked, would you
Right.
make the fee part of your gift?
Right.
And the majority of people say yes.
Yeah, I've noticed that a couple of times in online giving in the churches that we're visiting, where, if you're going to make $100 gift, it'll ask, "Do you want to cover the cost of the fees?" And you can say no.
Mm-hmm.
What it does then, it just diminishes the amount of the gift that I'm giving. But almost always, well, always, not almost, but always, we go, well, sure, we'll cover that. It's another $2.
That's exactly right, Gary. I do the same thing. I have never, if it's easy,
Yeah.
I have never not covered that.
And I think once you establish some of these online giving or text to give platforms, once you're in their system, it's easy to give again. You don't have to go through give them your name, your phone number, your whatever, all that kind of stuff that they initially want when you set it up. As a giver, when you come back, it's just ready to accept your gift.
That's correct.
Makes
And
it easy.
and most of these companies now have apps.
Right. Yep.
So that you can your active people can actually have it on their phone. And I have had churches tell me, since they went to using the app, I've heard of increases, typically of around 8 to 10%, just by switching to apps, because it was so easy for people to do.
Good.
So make the payment of fees a default. This last one, pastors, finance chairs. Have your finance chair people do this too. Go online and make a gift to your church. And then I want you to take a look at the thank you that you get. Almost all the companies will, they automatically generate thank yous. Well, take a look at it, because what you're going to find out is the one that typically comes automatically from as a thank you is like a Walmart or a Target. Okay. It's like business. It's thank you for your transaction. Very, very cold. That can be personalized. And I'm going to show you that in just a minute. There's a video here that, and you're going to have an opportunity to have a copy of this presentation. So you'll have all this stuff. A video on optimizing your online giving. It's done by one of our consultants. He literally wrote the book on online giving and does a fantastic job. It is about an hour, but if you and your finance team watch this and pay attention and do what Richard suggests, you're gonna see dividends. I absolutely promise you. Okay, here's one of those examples. Thank you for your donation. Details regarding your donation, your donation history, blah, blah, blah. Again, you can see that this was what Spry's used to be. Now, this is from another church that I'm working with, and I consulted with, and they went to, I think it was Vanco, and I did a gift with them just to see what the thank you would be, and here's their thank you. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a difference. And here you can see that amount, 2091. Well, it's so weird is because I gave 20, but the cost was 91 cents. And, you know, they had it as the default. And so of course I allowed that to stay. And, but it just gives you a different feel, doesn't it?
I like the way it connects giving to their mission.
Exactly, Gary.
Praising God, growing disciples, and serving the world. It's like, okay, we don't have to be fuzzy about what we're supporting because my gifts supported that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, and some of my churches have even gone where they won't even say Glenmar Church, but it will have the pastor's name.
Oh, okay.
And so they even make it more personal, which I think is a great idea.
And this does not negate, as Scott was saying earlier, the opportunity to write a personalized thank you note for a first-time giver that shows up.
You're exactly right. Yeah, that's the danger in me showing you this, is you think, oh my God, I can do this, and now I don't have to write all those notes he's talking about.
Yeah, the personalized handwritten note, no matter how bad the pastor's handwriting is, boy, that just means a lot. And I get them from folks, and it means a lot to have that.
It really does. It really does. It's, you know, and it's some of those things you get a handwritten note. Well, pastors, you know it. You've gotten handwritten notes from some of your people, you know, from a funeral or from a, you know, hospital visit or what you've meant in somebody's life. And man, those are the things that kind of keep you going, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we can do the same thing for somebody. Okay. Now, there is on that Giving 365 website, there is a recurring giving development plan, which actually is a way for you to grow your recurring giving, electronic giving and recurring giving. We call it recurring giving because we want it to be so that people actually sign up so that it is ongoing. We don't want it to be just a one-time thing. And you'll see some of the key recommendations. I think one of the real keys is getting you as the pastor, the finance team, and church leadership to sign up for it. Mm-hmm. Even if they have an issue with it, I encourage the entire team to do it so that you can stand in. I mean, just imagine you stand in front of the congregation, live or online, and you say, we believe it is so important that this is what we are doing as your leaders. Mm-hmm. And it makes a big difference. And then you can have this idea of a video that actually explains how it can happen. And that's what I'm just going to show you the one that Clarkston United Methodist Church created.
Hello and thank you for your generous spirit. I would like to show you the steps needed to make a recurring gift to Clarkston United Methodist Church. First, let's go to the website at clarkstonumc.org. On the top right of the website, you'll see a button labeled Give Now. Click on that button. You will see 3 options. Choose the option for Set Up a Recurring Gift. This is the page where you will enter your contact information and gift amount. To make this a recurring gift, you will need to log into the site first. If you have used the site before and are registered, go ahead and log in now. If you have not registered for an account yet, click on the Register button. To make a new account, go ahead and fill in your contact information, making sure you securely store your login ID and password. Your password must contain letters and numbers. Once you click the Register button, you will see your name at the bottom of the page with a message letting you know that you are logged in. You can now click the Give tab at the top of the page. Since you are logged in, your contact information is pre-filled and the scheduled gift box is selected. Now you will fill out how often you would like your recurring gift to happen and what amount you would like to give each time. The last step is to enter a payment method. You can use a card or a bank account. Save your payment method and you're ready to finish your recurring gift. Selecting Next at the bottom of the page gives you a chance to review your selections. After you have looked over the page, click Finish on the bottom right. A confirmation message will appear. You may now log out and close the browser window. Once again, thank you. Because of you, Clarkston United Methodist Church will continue to be a blessing to many through our ministry in God's name, both within and beyond our walls.
Nice.
Amen. Amen.
And it occurs to me, Scott, because I look at that and I'm thinking, okay, I'm already part of the church, and again, when we get back to normal, whatever that is or whenever that is, maybe we don't need to rely on this as much. Well, we're always going to have an online presence, and to learn how to do this now is setting us up for what will probably be a part of the way we do ministry forever. If we're not finding a way to do this, we're missing out on so many growth opportunities in terms of generosity among people. And again, if the goal is not just to suit and satisfy ourselves, those of us who are already in the church and growing older, but to reach younger generations and families, they're already using these platforms for almost every other aspect of their lives. And then they come to church and they're expected to give like it's the 1950s. So if we're going to reach new generations and younger people, more diverse people, then figuring this kind of thing out is just crucial. End of commercial.
That's exactly right. There's a group called the Unstuck Group, and they assist churches with vision. They're really fantastic. We have a partnership with them at Horizons. And Tony Morgan, who started the Unstuck Group, has done some fantastic webinars. And in one of them, I heard him say this quote, and it's really stuck with me. It's kind of shocking, but he said, we used to talk about church as the gathered church with an online presence. And in the future, and that future is now, we are going to be an online church with a gathered presence.
Yeah.
And you just have to wrap your heads around that, because it's going to happen. The only question is whether or not we're going to be at the front end or are we going to be at the tail end. And you know what you get when you're at the tail end.
Yeah, I think I'd rather be at the front end of that. And again, coming back to this, if it's truly not about us, and it's truly about the people who aren't with us, and especially the younger folks that God is asking us to reach. It doesn't mean we're not going to reach older folks like me. But if we're going to reach, let me just say this, unchurched folks who understand how this works in the world, if we're going to invite them into our church culture and we're not learning how to practice this, we're creating a divide and expecting them to cross it to be with us rather than our figuring it out and building a bridge to get where they are. And it's not about me. I don't need the church to just be what I need it to be for me. I want the church to be the fullest expression of God's activity in the world in a way that's going to make sense and make it easy for people to participate. You said it. It's about what's out there and about connected to our mission field.
That's right. Do we have any questions at this point? Anything?
No, I've got a question. I'm holding a little bit longer.
Okay.
But okay. I'm still waiting for some other questions to come on board. We'll just keep moving forward.
That sounds good. Okay. The third piece of something that you can do right now is staying connected with your leadership. Both those leaders who are financial leaders and ministry leaders. I frankly am going to focus on the financial leaders without apology. Who are financial leaders in your church? Well, one, you may not know because you may not have the information. And if you don't, that's a problem. And Gary indicated there are some ways to get around that. You know, you can, by the way, you might be interested in knowing that the discipline says that you cannot be kept from that information, by the way. That is actually in the discipline, just to remind you. Typically, these financial leaders give somewhere between 35 and 50% of your budget. Now, analytic firms that we work with have gotten this number down even more precise, and they tell us that in the average church, 6% of your households are going to give 40 to 45% of the dollars.
6%.
6% are going to give 40 to 45% of your income. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it might be advantageous to know who those 6% are and to be able to talk with them, speak with them, thank them. What a novel idea, right? Thank them for being so generous and for being such an important part of the life of the church. It's vital to know that. Vital to know that, in my opinion. Now, you need to understand, and Gary and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is even this 6%, they're giving to an average, and I mentioned this, 7 nonprofits. And so, okay, gang, just think about this. Remember that study, 40% of your year-end giving is going to be up for grabs. 40%, and your people are already giving to an average of 7 nonprofits. Guess what those other 7 nonprofits are going to be doing? They're going to be going after that year-end gift. Okay, so who are your financial leaders? It's important for you to know that and be aware of that. And I will say, when I do webinars now on general stewardship, and I talk about pastors knowing the giving amounts, it's still, to be honest, I almost can't believe it anymore after 20 years. It is still the number one thing that gets me in the most trouble.
Yep. Every time I bring it up. You know, but the point, Scott, and I'm so glad you're talking about the 6% giving 40%, or 6 households. We're not like favoring them over everyone else in the church. What we're doing is we're honoring people who have the spiritual gift of generosity and the wherewithal and resources in order to make these gifts that comprise 40% of our budgets.
Yep.
If these were people who had the gift of evangelism and they were winning souls for Christ, I think we would probably be gathered with them from time to time, just as a group, to say, wow, help us to understand why that's important, how are you doing it, and how the rest of us can get there to get where you are, right? If they were prayer partners and they were prayer warriors, we would get in a circle with them to say, let's find a way to release that for the kingdom of God. Why is it when we come to those who have financial wherewithal in the church, we hang back as if somehow it's a sin to talk about money with them?
Yeah.
These are folks who God has prepared to help us.
That's
Talking to them, thanking them, taking them to dinner, meeting them for lunch, just asking, what is it about this? What is it about our ministry that is encouraging you to continue to be one of our lead givers? Help us to know that, because we need to pay attention. Or what are we doing that might get in the way of it? All these folks could teach us so much.
Yep. And the other way to think of it, Gary, is think about it. You know, we have no problem, right? When somebody has a gift for singing.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
put them in the choir. We'll have them do solos, and we'll thank them, won't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have the congregation applaud them.
Yes. Yes.
And these people have the gift of generosity, and some of them have the gift of being able to make money.
Yes. And if we have the courage and the faith to approach them, especially toward this last quarter of this year, they know how bad things are.
Yep.
They may not know how bad things are if we're not communicating to the church where the church is realistically in its finances going into this next year. But what would stop us from going to some of those folks to say, this has really been a tough deal. Would you pray about increasing your giving or helping us with X, Y, and Z as a way to help this church continue to move forward and to round this turn? A lot of those folks will wait to be asked, not because they're prideful, but because they want to know there's a legitimate need and that they're being invited into it. And I have watched time and time again, people that we didn't even know would have the wherewithal to do that when they were asked, stepped up with a gift that just was unimaginable and so generous and loving.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. And it's Gary, it's one of the most beautiful things is to give people that opportunity to make a gift that brings joy to their hearts.
Absolutely. Like singing does for somebody.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. That's exactly right. Okay. So why is it a good idea to stay engaged with your financial leaders? Well, you can read the screen. One of the most important things is just to realize that, and Gary said it very well when he said it's about relationships. My old boss at Cargill Associates, which was Gary and I were in opposing companies back then, at Cargill and RSI. And but Steve Cargill used to always love to say, it's not about fundraising, it's about friend raising.
Right. Yeah.
That it's about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And being engaged and being in relationship with your financial leaders, just like you would be with your Sunday school teachers.
Yep.
Just like you would be with your choir, right? How many of you have choir picnics? I don't hear any flack about a choir picnic. But man, sometimes when I bring up the idea of why don't you have a gathering for that top 6%? Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. It's about relationships. It's about relationships. I'm going to tell you a little tidbit that you may choose to believe or not believe. Here's what I've discovered. I've discovered the people who complain the loudest about doing that, they're not the widow's mite people. See, that's what we think. And that's the argument that gets thrown up to me is well, what about the widow's mite person? The real widow's mite person is thankful for these financial leaders.
Yeah.
They are thankful because they know they're making ministry happen in the church that they love. Okay? The person that I've found complain the loudest about this are the people who think and know they should probably be in that 6%, but they're not. And they complain the loudest.
Touché.
And again, pastors, if you don't know where people are in terms of their giving, then you're not going to know that.
Right.
So just some things to think about.
Can I just insert something here too, Scott?
Sure, Gary. Yeah.
When it comes to, again, pastoral care as it relates to stewardship, and this is just so important, as Scott's pointing out, it's just critical. And I don't know why we think finances and stewardship are competitors or that, they don't belong in the same house. But again, I would say to pastors, I've always taught, you should know what people give. And you've got integrity enough that you're not going to treat them differently because you know what they give. But if that's still a deal for you, I understand it. But anytime there's movement in giving, you can have somebody else look at this to say, I don't need to know what they give, but if their giving goes up significantly or down significantly, I need to know that, because that's an indication of something that's happening in their lives, something good or something bad. And if those trends continue, then I ought to probably follow up to see what's going on. Anytime I've done that as a pastor, I found people who were unemployed or underemployed or had some kind of financial catastrophe that happened in their lives, and they were embarrassed by it. And it kept them from church. It kept them at a distance from everybody until we extended pastoral care and understood what the concern was and was able to help them deal with it. It is a matter of spiritual care.
And Gary, it can be freeing for people to actually talk about it.
Yeah.
I was doing a feasibility study for a church in Winchester, and they wanted me to talk to this couple who had been lead givers in every campaign. And they were both in their 80s. They were I love this. They were like my grandparents. I just loved them to death. And when we got to talking about giving, they said, Scott, we just aren't going to be able to. And they told me what was happening. And I could tell they felt horrible. They felt so bad. And I talk with them about there are times in life and that it's okay. And that I thank them for their generosity in the past. And I said, now's a time maybe for you to receive. And the tears formed in their eyes. And it was really for both of us, for all of us, it was a healing moment.
Yeah.
And never would have had that if we didn't have the courage to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So here are some strategies you can consider. And I think you'll find that it's actually inspiring and fun. One thing you might, first of all, there's a resource on our Giving 365, connecting with ministry and financial leaders. But just some ideas. One is to consider 2-time-a-year gathering. And you can do these via Zoom right now if you have to. And what this does is it allows you the opportunity to say thank you, allows you to cast a vision for future ministry. I mean, frankly, the month of November is a great time to do one of these.
Yeah.
Because just think about it, saying thank you to the people who have gotten you through a pandemic and your finances are okay. Cast the vision for 2021. Something inspirational about what the church is doing. And if appropriate, an invitation to get involved, maybe to make a special year-end gift or to consider their giving for 2021. That's one way to do that. It was actually one of the churches in downtown New York, and they called me and wanted me to meet with the finance committee, and had a really interesting conversation. I told him, I said, I think what you need to do is each one of you need to go pay a visit to, I want you to divide it up and go see your top 20 givers. And I want you just to go say thank you. And then I want you to ask this question: what inspires you to be generous with your church?
Yeah.
I went back, Gary, and I met with the same team, and they said they were scared to death going into it. Just scared to death about it. I went back and they said it was the best thing they had ever done. They were so inspired and moved by the stories that they heard.
I bet it probably encouraged them to increase their giving.
I would think, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because that's kind of the way it works.
It is, isn't it? It is. Okay. So when you think about your financial leaders, the most important thing is for you to be their pastor. And Gary said it wonderfully, that it really is about you being a pastor and being there for them.
Mhm.
Think about, I think about in the churches that I've served, and, you had the people who you knew were generous, or you at least thought they were. And the church would go to them when there were needs, especially this time of year, well, we got to go to those same 10 people so we can meet our budget. Can you imagine going to those people instead and asking questions? Well, how are you doing? Tell me about your family.
Mhm.
How you doing during COVID?
Mhm.
Some of the financial leaders, they have their own businesses. Some of them are feeling pressure right now.
Yeah. Hmm.
Some of them feel guilt because, they know that they're supporting families, and they may not feel like they can be open and honest. You can go and be their pastor. Can you imagine asking them the question, how can I pray for you?
Mm.
How can the church be there for you? I mean, that's so cool, isn't it?
Hmm.
And again, as always, it's an opportunity to say thank you.
And you can't do that as a pastor if you don't know who those people are.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, and to kind of sum up this section, it's be the pastor. You're just it's in a different way. You have a different venue, but it's still being the pastor, and it's being the church, right?
Mhm.
It's just doing it in a different way. Now, are there any questions? Any other questions that have come up, or do you want to jump into this next section, Gary?
We'll keep monitoring the questions. We can just stay on a roll. You're on
Okay.
a roll.
Okay, so here's one of the things we promised. What are some things that you might be able to do to actually finish strong and start fast for this coming year? One of the things, and you may be, I don't know where you all are, but most churches, they're either in the middle of doing a stewardship campaign and they're frankly scared to death.
Mm.
Or they've decided not to do something, or they've decided maybe they're going to start something coming up real soon, which obviously it's getting very late. I'm going to offer you a possibility that you can use. I'm calling it a gratitude offering. Some churches are using it and they're calling it Go Forward. Now, unfortunately, in United Methodist churches, sometimes that has a different connotation that creates difficulty. I'll let you figure it out. But a gratitude offering, it can be used right now. It could also be used as a year-end appeal, which I'm going to be doing in that Clarkston church that I mentioned. We're going to actually be doing this as their year-end appeal. It could also be used, let's say you've done a fall campaign and maybe your results weren't quite stellar. Maybe your year-end giving isn't quite what you hoped for. You could do this in January or February. You might also consider doing something like this during Lent. The idea is this. It is what we want to do is have a 3 to 4 week time period where we're going to focus on how we've experienced God's blessings through the ministry of the church during this really difficult and strange time. And you're going to ask people to make a over and above gratitude gift in honor of a ministry, a person, a project, something that has been meaningful for them in their life in the church. And it's just really positive and uplifting. And I think it's going to allow churches to end with some things that are really strong. So you have the components of this: a video, 3 to 4 minute video. Okay, it's relational. It's you as the pastor, maybe a couple of key lay people. You're talking about ministry over the past, 6 months. There's testimony of people expressing gratitude. And then the pastor, you're asking for a gratitude offering in honor of friends, staff, ministry. This video gets shared in worship. It gets emailed out to every household, and it gets put on the website. That gets followed up with a letter from the pastor, and you include a self-addressed stamped envelope, and you're asking people, again, you're basically making the same ask as you are in the video. You're asking people to honor someone, something that they're grateful for through a gift to the church. And you include the gratitude offering online as one of the options. You also include, you do an email as well, the same kind of thing, okay? Link to the video, link to the giving page, and you're inviting people to make a gift. You're inviting people to make a gift. You then have follow-up calls and emails. You have a team that you're going to recruit to call households to hear their expressions of gratitude or to ask if they would still like to participate. And then you have some sort of a concluding gratitude celebration, and you create a word cloud. There might be a list, there might be a gratitude wall, something that acknowledges what's happened and celebrates the gratitude that people have given towards. And it's a very different but positive way to encourage folks to make specific gifts. Now, if you want to change this, let's say you want to change this to a year-end appeal. Okay, maybe you've done your stewardship program, and you would rather use this for a year-end appeal. You do the same thing, but you just change it and you include something special that you're hoping people would be willing to fund. It might be missions. It might be technology. It could be a feeding program, whatever you want to do. And you can put that into the email, into the letter, and into the video. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is this is a sample video from a smaller United Methodist Church in Rochester, and I deliberately chose this because I didn't want a big church.
Hi, St. Paul's friends. A lot has happened since March. No one could have predicted all of the changes that we have made in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've done our best during a challenging time to respond in ways that are helpful and healthy for others. Truly, we've been living and loving like Jesus as individuals and as a church. Despite, and in some cases because of COVID-19, St. Paul's is stronger and more important to our community, to you and to me, than ever before. Our worship, music, education ministries, missions, outreach, fellowship, and all the ways we are supporting one another, virtually and in person, are vital to the community we serve and to the people God loves. I am more grateful than ever for the ministry we share as we lead people of all ages to live and love like Jesus. I have witnessed the resilience and the love that you have shown each other over the past few months. You have been calling, emailing, texting, and driving by just to make sure that every person has what is needed during this pandemic. You practiced social distancing as you stepped up and steps forward to help our neighbors around us. And here are some examples. Neighborhood House, Baldwin Center in Pontiac, Cass Community in the heart of Detroit, the Waymakers Program, Henry Dennis School in Liberia scholarships for students, this summer's Connect Through Kindness project, the American Red Cross blood drives, St. Paul's Community Garden, Blast Off to School program, all of the masks that have been made by our St. Paul sewers. And that's just the beginning of the list. Wow. St. Paul's, this is what living and loving like Jesus really looks like. So thank you for contributing to our church. Thank you for being a blessing to God and to others in the community. I love the way that our church is responding to this pandemic with love and generosity, just like our God. And with that said, I'd like to invite you to join me in reflecting in all the ways that God has blessed you and your family over the past several months. How has God been present for you, even in the midst of this pandemic? And then, I invite you to consider making a one-time gratitude offering in recognition of the many ways in which God and your church have been a blessing to you. We want to celebrate all that God is doing with us and through us, even during this very time. In the next few days, you will be receiving a special letter from me and information on how to make your gratitude offering to the church. We're enclosing a return envelope with a stamp because we want you to be able to make this offering safely. This letter will also include information about how to make your gratitude offering online if that is the way that you would prefer to contribute. Finally, please email Debbie Kelly to share the name of the person, ministry, or something else for which you are grateful, and send along a photo as well. We will be acknowledging the gratitude offering honorees during our Sunday, November 22nd worship services. So please be sure to send in your gratitude offering as soon as possible so we may include your honoree. Truly, this has been a year like none other. Yet in the midst of it all, God has blessed our church's mission and ministry and continues to guide us into the future. God is with us. We have never been alone. Thanks be to God.
Okay, wasn't that cool?
Very cool.
And just with a little bit of a shift, you could turn that into a fall, or I'm sorry, a year-end type of appeal. You could make it at the beginning of the year, and it wouldn't take a lot of effort to do that. As I said, you can easily adapt it. There are some churches I have that they're doing this gratitude. If you haven't done anything yet, consider doing the gratitude offering. And then what you might do is move your fall campaign and do it in early 2021. So you would do a gratitude offering now, and then perhaps in winter, spring, you could consider doing the actual generosity or stewardship campaign. I'm having 2 or 3 of my churches that are actually, we're actually doing that. And here's one of the concerns, one of the things that you hear, especially from the finance people, is we can't do that because we're not going to have pledges.
Right.
That doesn't mean people aren't going to give.
Right.
There's this mindset, oh my gosh, we're not going to have a pledge or an estimate of giving card. And so, our people are going to, no, people aren't going to stop giving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Promise. I absolutely promise. Because I'm seeing that we're actually working. I've got a church in Maryland that they haven't had pledges for 6 months because we had to postpone the campaign. Haven't had pledges for 6 months. Giving is up in both capital and regular giving.
Yeah, a lot of times, and because I pastored really small churches too. My smallest church had 8 people up in Potter County, Costello United Methodist Church. On a good Sunday, we had 8 people. And I remember, part of the concern was around pledging was to somehow that more strongly connected people to giving. We found out it wasn't the case. But when it comes to setting the budget, it's like, well, we need to know what the relative pledges are. Well, we tend to set our budgets anyway. We know that we're not going to have pledges according to what our budget is.
Exactly.
It's a guesstimate. Scott, when I look at this, and I like this a lot, and it seems to fit kind of an online world as well. It's something that could be done very easily right now in COVID land, especially if a church has, some in-building gatherings and some online gatherings. And as I'm looking at it too, I'm cognizant of the fact that the majority of our congregations in this conference are small. I mean, 50 people or less a Sunday.
Yep.
This is a process that could work well in a church that size too. And
So,
may have to be adapted a little bit more for churches that are really in areas that struggle with Wi-Fi, the technology of even creating videos and some of the other pieces in that. But I see enough in this that I think small churches the smaller they are, the more relational they are.
mm-hmm.
This, I think, could tap into that strength. And without spending a lot of time thinking about how we can stylize this around small churches, maybe we can think about that in the next couple of minutes. We can just banter back and forth. But I want to just throw the offer out that if you're representing one of those churches wondering how on earth do we make this work there, call my office, EVC, Equipping Vital Congregations. I will volunteer to speak with you by phone, spin some ideas around how you can make this work in your church. Think about pieces that are going to go and other things that maybe need to be done differently. But our office will work with you on that.
And Gary, I'll just say that if we can find a time that's mutually agreeable, I would love to be a part of that call.
Awesome.
And help with that, because I fully believe. I realized as soon as I said, well, this is a smaller church, and people saw the size of that church. What? That's not a small church. It's smaller than many, but you're right. It's not really a small church. I'm not that far removed from something. The 50 plus, I really believe this could be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This really can be done. And sometimes, I mean, my gosh, I've had churches that have they've done it, and they've burned a DVD, and they've taken a DVD around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if a church that is that small, you could actually do that without a great deal of difficulty.
Yeah, there are technologies that would still work for that, I believe, as well. And I read somewhere recently that churches that are doing their annual stewardship campaign after the first of the year, like in January, are actually finding that better than trying to shoehorn it into the fall with all of its busyness. And I'm wondering if that's even going to be more true with COVID land. And if that's the case, if we can defer that to after the first of the year, the annual stewardship, whatever that is, some churches, it's a very light touch. Others, it's a lot more, it's like Consecration Sunday oriented. Mm-hmm. Much more involved process. But to hold that off and use this last quarter, Thanksgiving and Christmas and Advent and all that, for this the gratitude offering, gosh, sounds like a really good fit.
It really is, Gary. And the idea that we've really been encouraging churches to think about that, because the studies do indicate that spring campaigns are more effective than fall campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's fascinating. You can even look at your giving trends. Here are some ways you can gauge what may be more effective. Look at your giving and attendance trends. Look at the months of September and October, and then look at, let's say, March, April, that time frame.
Right.
And I have found some churches where there's a real stark difference, and it's clear that the spring is the better time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing annual campaigns this coming spring, and we're concluding on Palm Sunday.
Mm.
It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you take Lent to do some of the spiritual work. Mm-hmm. And you clearly connect it. And so I do think it's very possible. And I think there are some ways that we might be able to partner together to help make that happen for groups of small churches. It's something that I've done a lot in New Jersey. And it's a great way to be able to do that kind of work with smaller churches that may not normally be able to do it.
Yeah, and invite some of the smaller church pastors, maybe some who've tuned in on this, to even be a part of that conversation with us. But I love that, and I appreciate that offer. Again, anything Equipping Vital Congregations can do to help with this, it's just so important. I do have another question here, and Jane had asked about making the ask for year-end giving suggestion on time frame and communication and all, and I think we just answered that. But she has another question. For churches that are doing very little related to the stewardship, communication, or online giving, this can be a lot to swallow. I'm guessing it would be wise to try setting some goals and do this one piece at a time.
And the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes. And there are some rather simple ways that you can make the move into online giving. The ones that seem to be the quickest, PayPal. PayPal has the ability to do that, and I'm trying to think if that's. I have a couple of churches that have done that, and they've been able to do it relatively quickly and painlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you want to have a conversation about that, you can feel free to call me or email me or through Gary's office, and I'd be happy to get you some more information on that.
Awesome. And the slides that you have up here related to the gratitude offering and the lining out the various steps and all that, is that available somewhere for folks to get if they weren't able to just jot things down quickly?
Well, like I said, the presentation is going to be on Giving 365.
Okay.
And Gary, I'd also be happy, obviously, to get you a copy of the presentation.
Okay, that would be good. Well, and you know what? This is recorded, so it's going to be on this. Now I'm thinking about it. We will have it.
So it's going to be recorded, yeah. And but I'll also get an actual presentation, a PDF of the presentation, and that way people, if they even want to, can actually print it off if they wanted to.
That would be awesome. Somebody said, thank you, this has been very helpful. We have a few minutes remaining, and Scott, gosh, thank you so much for your time. You have done so much great work in the former Central Pennsylvania Conference and the now present Susquehanna Annual Conference. I keep running into churches that have worked with you all over the place. So you've made a name for yourself here, and you've just done so much to help us. I know that you've done presentations in some of our districts. I know you're the kind of person, you've made yourself available any way you can to help our congregations, and we are just so grateful for you. I'm grateful for you as a friend and for your willingness to do this. In closing, I would just ask again this is for you. If a church was to commit to one thing right now, one thing that might help them the most, assuming that right now they're not doing much, okay, we got to have a baseline here. So they're not doing a whole lot, and I got to sense that in some of the interactions on the questions and answers. They're not doing a whole lot. What is the most helpful thing they could be doing or add for this time of the year?
The most helpful thing they could be doing is the offering talk.
Okay.
I really believe that the offering talk is going to move the needle more than anything else.
I've seen some things online. I wish I would have copied them down, books and resources where they actually have like offering verbiage around some lead sentences that you could then add to, so people don't have to invent that every week. When I pastored one of the churches I pastored, we committed to doing this, and it does become a little bit redundant in week 30, out of 52. We sound like you're saying the same things over and over again. Are you aware of any resources that would have something like that, like 52 weeks of?
I know that we do not have 52 weeks of that. One of the things that we have on Giving 365 is we have templates for, we call it the revolving door of offering talks, where we talk about 5 to 6 different kinds of offering
Oh,
talks.
this is good. Okay, this is what I'm looking for.
Okay. And, one of the things, Gary, that you and I might talk about is, if it seems as if that would be the best piece to go with, one of the things I've been kicking around in my own head is whether or not we could pull together 5 or 6 churches and do where I'm actually coaching 5 or 6 churches in offering talks. And it would be actually watching them do them, coaching them, evaluating, meeting together online as a team and saying, okay, this is what you can do different. This is how you can make it better. Those kinds of things.
That is cool. And Mira said I'd be interested in offering talks, chats, and teasers, etc. And honestly, Carlisle United Methodist Church is one of those churches, and I visit with them online. They're kind of our church now. We've adopted them. They may not know that yet, but they're stuck with us now. Mira she just does a great job with that. And Pastor Jake and Jim, who was there before him, it was one of the things that I found compelling about this particular church is how well they were doing that. So thank you, Mira, for offering that. She says, yes, we keep showing up. And Jake says he's glad to adopt us, or that we've adopted them. So I'm glad that they tuned in, but they are a church that folks, one of the best things you can do is visit other churches on Sunday morning online, see what they're doing. Watch how this unfolds. And Carlisle United Methodist Church is one. Camp Hill United Methodist Church is another. I know I keep picking on the large churches in this area. I'm certainly, I'm going to miss somebody if I start going beyond that. But get online and spend some time seeing how other people are handling it and learning some things. That helps a lot.
Amen. It does.
But I like that. An adapted process for gratitude offering for very small churches, maybe talking about that with you, Scott, and then the offering talks. And we already have some volunteers to help with that and some coaching around that. Scott and I will get our heads together and we'll see what we can come up with and try and get to that like very, very, very soon. So as soon as our calendars will line up, if we can align the planets.
Amen. And Gary, let me offer to churches, if they want a 30 to 45 minute, free coaching session on any of this.
Super.
To kick off, I am happy to do that. And, I actually have no, I don't have the information right. Again, it's 717. Terrible thing when you can't get your own phone number right.
Pretty bad. I don't know what that says.
I think it says 62.
I think it's probably an age-related thing.
I think so. So I'd be happy to offer that to folks. Okay.
Okay, that would be great. Well, listen, we are at the hour, and thanks again, Scott and Cindy, for being a part of this and helping to run this. And thanks to, we have no idea how many people were on board for the live video or the live webinar, but this will be turned into a video and you'll be able to access that. And we'll send out information in quick links and follow up with you all as to where you can find the link to that. And we will follow up to this conversation because Scott and I, if you haven't picked up on it, we honestly believe, wow, this is just so crucial to what it means to be a healthy, vital congregation. And if we ignore this, it's game over, because we can't do any good thing unless we invite people to support it. with all of their gifts and graces. And that's what we want to do. So thank you, everybody, for being with us. This concludes our webinar, and we'll look forward to connecting with you again in another one very, very soon. Take care, everybody.